this interview, I'm going to be interviewing the one and only Sean Fitzgerald from Ireland. Sean is a very accomplished Celtic artist and pretty much stands alone within the scene and within the culture. He's a wonderful guy, and I really enjoyed recording this with him, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it too. So, let's do it. All right then, let's get into this. Sean, it's wonderful to have you here. How are you doing?
Not too bad. It's good to meet you, Sean.
You too, yeah. Not too bad. I mean, obviously, we were hoping to have met in person by now, but with everything that's happened, that hasn't happened yet. But
I know, yeah. Kind of strange days.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, first of all, I just want to say, welcome to the Northern Fire Collective. And it's wonderful to have you on board with the project, because Brock's not here for this one, but me and Brock especially, with us doing Celtic art as well, we are really big fans of what you do. It's really impressive stuff.
Oh, listen, it's only an honor. Like, to be honest with you, the way you have pages you go to inspiration. All the artists on Northern Fire, they're all there, just bookmarked. So yeah, like jeepers, the honor's mine, really. But thanks, Sean.
Oh, my pleasure. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, the idea of the project is to just try and bring people together, of like-minded stuff, and all that sort of thing. So as you know, I'm really into Celtic stuff as well. I would say that personally, I love Irish mythology and the art that's come out of the ground, and and all that from the archaeology. But I know more about the Welsh stuff personally. So to see what you do with the Irish side it's really, really cool.
I can say the same back to you, Sean. I'm not too up on the Welsh stuff. I wish I was. Though I have read it, but I'm not going to pretend I have any great knowledge. So it's great seeing the stuff that you're posting too. Brilliant.
Oh, thanks, man. But that's the thing, it's sort of wonderful to see sort of the other side of it, because there's two sides to the Celtic coin, isn't there? When it comes to Britain, or the British Isles, should I say? You've got the P branch of the Celtic language and the Q branch. Obviously, I'm on the P branch with Welsh, and Ireland is more on the Q. So an example of this for people at home is, let's say, the second name you have, like my second name is Parry, and that comes from Map Harry, or son of Harry, and in Scottish that would be like Mac Harry.
Same here. It would be my name in Irish, Fitzgerald, would be Mac Garlt, Mac son of, yeah. Nick daughter of, yeah.
Very cool.
There's lots of comparisons really that you could go into on the Scottish language to very much the Ulster spoken Irish. You would have there's such a strong link of people just through I suppose it would be through agriculture, I suppose. People from here going over to do the harvest season to Scotland. And of course then there's great links then between Ulster and Scotland. So the language has become, we'd say you'd have a lot of Irish speakers up here who wouldn't be good with the Irish spoken in Munster or down the country, but would understand Scots Gaelic. It's it's like, considering there's only 3 dialects, there's a lot of differences.
Yeah, it's kind of the same with Wales in that sense. I doubt the difference is as big, but the difference in the Welsh in North and South Wales, I think the South Walians find it more difficult to understand, as in the North with our extra sounds and so on. But let's move on to some of what you do then with your work, because as I said, I see you focusing a lot on the Irish mythology. And the characters within that. So what is it that got you into it all?
What got me into it, Sean, I suppose as kids, I would imagine it's very similar to Wales, in that like we grew up with a lot of the characters, depending on the teacher you'd have in school. So our heroes would have been Finn McCool and Cuchulainn. So we kind of admired them the way you would admire the Lone Ranger or whatever,
Yeah.
They were very strong. So we'll say then as a kid, we'll say traveling to certain places, you'd hear the different stories. So I wouldn't have realized it at the time. I wouldn't have realized because there were just other kind of characters, that you read stories of. But I suppose like growing up as a kid in the 70s, it would have been like a real push on reclaiming a lot of these things. And then you'd artists like Jim Fitzpatrick coming out with like Louvre the Silver Arm, things like that. And he reinvented it for a new generation, of the Celtic art, that is. So like by the time in the 80s, you had anyone who kind of was into drawing and stuff in school, everyone loved Jim Fitzpatrick, everyone. And of course there was the connection, music, Tin Lizzy and all that. But by the time when I was trying to get into art college, when I was leaving school, I remember my teacher saying, leave out all that stuff. You're not going to get in. Do not say you like Jim Fitzpatrick. That's illustration. You aim for fine art and stuff like that. But
I was told exactly the same sort of stuff. Yeah.
Sorry.
I was told exactly the same stuff, and well, look at us now.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you see, I knew there'd be a lot of similarities. What would you have grown up on certain heroes in Wales, like, and who would they have been?
Absolutely. So, well, I suppose I wouldn't have been so consciously aware of it at the time, but obviously one of the biggest ones is King Arthur and Merlin, or Merthin, as I would call him, Taliesin and Bran, Vendigate Fran. So sort of the same sort of stuff, really.
And was it pushed in schools, or would it depend on your teacher?
Well, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, actually. So my secondary school was Craven, and there was always Celtic art around, but funnily enough, in the hallway where we'd have to wait before going into class, in the hallway before going into art class, there was a Celtic dog on the wall, and it was a classic, say Book of Kells type one, right, with a tail that went into that phallic sort of leaf shape. Yeah. So I'd really like to try and get a copy of it if it's still on the wall, but I don't think anyone necessarily told me not to do it, but until I got to university, and then people were like, no. This is not the direction you should be going in. But
and do you think, was it seen as old-fashioned? Do you think that's why they were telling you don't go that direction, or what was the thinking? Do you think?
Well, personally, I've had some really amazing art teachers over the years, especially from when I went to Llandrillo Coleg, just up the road from here. Amanda and Robin were really supportive of everything that I did. They gave like little tweaks, but they didn't try to push me in any direction. And so they were, in my eyes, good teachers, where a lot of teachers, sadly, are going more in the direction of, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of failed artists out there that want they want to turn you into what they wanted to become. And they want to push you down the road that they want to see you go down.
Like parents.
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a strange. Like, I do think, I was chatting to the Celtic artist Courtney Davis.
Yeah.
I hung out with him on he published the book, my book, the Moitura book, and so he told me, he said, "Look, come on down and just hang out for a couple of days." And you're kind of, I had that kind of almost that starstruck thing where you're kind of got very quiet and you're like, oh God, he's just going to think I'm, but he was just so relaxed and stuff. But he was telling me, he said, like, it seems to go in waves. So we'll say he started out kind of in 77 and there was this big wave of kind of Celtic and Viking. And then he said that went into the early 80s, then it disappeared. And he says, no, this is what he was saying. I'm pretty sure he said, no, it's like the third wave, that there's the third wave coming in. And he said, like, shows like Vikings and things like that, they're pushing this new interest. And then that interest will expand into like either Celtic or like a continuation of like kind of Norse culture or whatever. Which was interesting, to hear from him of like kind of like, all right, okay, I suppose like anything, like fashion or whatever, and then you'll just have your people who kind of stick with it because they like it too, are passionate about it.
Absolutely. That's the thing, isn't it? Like all of the Viking Norse thing is it's a step ahead of the Celtic stuff at the moment because of the show Vikings. And well, I personally feel like it's a blessing and a curse because I want people to be as interested in Celtic as they are in Nordic, because that's where I am. For me, it's, I like history. I like art all the way, through different periods and so on. So, because, a lot of people think that I'm going to have a bias to one or the other. And I really am pretty much split down the middle because I find them both just as fascinating. I just get frustrated that people can sometimes just be like Viking, Viking, Viking. And you're like, well, even in Scandinavia, there's a lot more to history than just Vikings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Like my interest, you could say, oh, it's Celtic, and I suppose that's what you see, but the things cross over so much, and like if you like, let's say Viking not work, it would be very strange if you didn't like Celtic not work. What I mean? Like the similarities are huge, so but I suppose like anything, people kind of, I suppose if they get into something, it's like that's it, like music, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, right, I am into reggae and nothing else, or I'm into punk or whatever it might be. And it's just, people who just like, bits and pieces of everything, don't you? You know what I mean? It's art is much the same, I think,
Yeah. Especially when it comes to what we're talking about, because I sat down once and I set out with the mission of writing a blog on the differences in between Celtic and Nordic art. And it didn't take me long to sort of realize that it should be more of the similarities that I should be pointing out, because, when it comes down to it, there's not actually that, there's obviously some big differences, but you could say that it's, the whole, the art form in general is like a language, but it's almost like a different dialect, like we're talking about the difference in between Irish and Celtic. If I was to talk Welsh now, and do you speak Irish?
I'm terrible at Irish. I live in the Gaeltacht, but I'm from, this is always my excuse, I'm from the south originally, the very south Cork. We have a completely different dialect. So I would have worked with a lot of native speakers when I used to be a Cork builder. And then I moved to the centre of Ireland in Dublin, didn't speak any Irish for I lived there for about 10 years. And I've been here 16 years. And like where I work is on a farm, it's mainly native speakers. So I'm terrible. Like I'll give you an example. Okay, so I'm trying to think. So we'll say down the country in Cork, where I'm from, we would say "Conasatatu," how are you? Up here, they'd say "G'day Maratatu," and there's like words of like there's just different pronouncing like the whole time. Like you could you could read it the same, but I kind of do the kind of token like kind of Majing moi, like lovely day, that kind of stuff, weather kind of stuff. But other than that, no, I'm not too good. What about yourself and Welsh?
Yeah, well, I'm not like first language as such. I did all of my education in Welsh, first language, so only had like an hour of English a week. So
Wow.
My Welsh is, if I was to try and conduct myself in a court of law, I wouldn't necessarily have the vocabulary for it, but I can get through general stuff. Day to day. Like what's been lovely over lockdown is that, with the Welsh lockdowns and stuff, I've ended up getting the chance to meet a lot more Welsh people and to conduct my sessions just purely in Welsh, which is really, really nice.
Brilliant.
But what I was going to say though, what you were saying in Irish, I have no idea of what it is that you're actually saying there, because that's the thing is, we were saying about the similarity in between the language in some ways, but in other ways it's completely foreign, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's what's really interesting is so Brock speaks Irish, and so while we're working away in the studio, we'll come across a couple of words every now and then, and say like, oh, what's that in Irish or what's that in Welsh, and it's surprising how often we do find like the common denominator, and sometimes that's just because it's Proto-Indo-European, but other times it's because it is a little bit later, and we could probably say very basic sentences and understand each other on a few things, but it's really hard.
Yeah, but that's interesting though, because I didn't know there'd be too many common words, to be honest with you, because I look at Welsh, and again, I'm not good at Irish, but it looks so different, as a written language, and even the sounds, But I think even what we're both doing, it's great to have a knowledge of language like that, in that you find out things. Like there's one recently, and it's the word, it's grain clock, right? So that's the Irish word for quartz. But if you like quartz stones, but if you directly translate that, it's sunstone. So then, like when you link into ancient sites, like locally here, we have a stone. It's like it's like a boulder, right? It's a massive, big white quartz boulder, and it's just down the road here from where I live. And they've put it on a big concrete plinth, I suppose. And
I think I saw it on your Instagram.
Oh yeah, I do post about it a lot, because it's very interesting that there's a lot of history behind it. Like, because it comes into, we'd say, the first, like when I look out my window here, there's Tory Island, so that's the first place mentioned in ancient Irish manuscripts. It's the first place mentioned, and on there is like Balor of the Evil Eye, the Fomorians, and it's this kind of darker part of mythology. So like people love talking about kind of Lou and stuff, and that's all good, because it's all this light and kind of real positive, I suppose. But you're going to have, they both have to exist, So then Tory, like even when you're out there, they it's not something they brag about in their tourism, because it's this darker thing, even though everybody knows, like it's a very well known story. But getting back to the sunstone. So we'll say the stone down here, it's a massive white quartz stone. And that is where Balor, would say there's Lugh Lámhfhada, Lugh of the long arm. He would be, he'd be kind of like, he'd be the god of light here, if you're familiar with them. And we'll say...
he's called Lle in Welsh mythology.
Oh, of course, and it would be Lug, wouldn't it? There, is it?
Well, I guess, but in Welsh it's Lle Llawcyfes, which means like Lle of the dexterous hand.
Oh, fantastic! Oh, Jesus, lovely to hear that now.
And there's a really interesting story behind it as well.
Okay, we have to get into this then. Okay, so here, right, so in our mythology here, Lugh would have been born on Tory Island, and the story is it was prophesied that his grandfather, Balor of the Evil Eye, that his grandson would kill him. So Balor had one daughter, Etna, and he locked her in a tower, and they said this like a glass tower. and then it could be a quartz tower, and it's always on about the light from the tower. So you're going back again to the language thing of like, is it the sun? Is it quartz? Is it, is this anyway? It's so anyway. This guy, a local guy, Seán, he went over. Like, I'll try and cut the story very, very short.
Yeah.
But it's basically Seán fell in love with Balor's daughter. We'll say she fell pregnant. Balor came over to the mainland and cut Seán's head off on this massive quartz stone. And we'll say there's a natural rustic line on the top that they'd say is the blood of Seán. This stone, getting back to language, the sunstone, would say in a lot of sites, they would say that there is quartz stone, that it's like a sort of a life energy. And people would like, now this is all theory,
Yeah.
So it's like there was this idea of that you would hit quartz together because they'd find different shards of quartz to create like a spark.
Yeah, it makes like white lights, doesn't it? At night.
Yeah, and so then when they were burying bodies here, they would put in like 3 to 4 pieces of quartz. So then the thinking is here, like we know this stone in mythology, but then there is also the thinking of like it's a sunstone. It probably represented like this a pagan place, like a pagan identity for this area. Like I know, is there some is it a well somewhere in Wales where you put in quartz that it for against disease, or it's some sort of belief, or am I right? No,
I'm not sure about that. I'm not so sharp on that. But this is leading me to think about there's a stone circle on the closest stone circle on the mountain here is up in Penmawr, Meini Hirion, and they call it the Druid Circle now in English. And they know from excavating it that all inside the circle was all lined with a bed of quartz originally.
Wow!
So that's kind of interesting. That obviously it's very old, but like a lot of these ideas do run down through the centuries, don't they? So.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I don't know about the well, though.
Yeah, no, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Like I have heard of the shards being found at megalithic sites in Wales as well, but I couldn't tell you what ones. I read it somewhere,
I will look it up.
But it is interesting. So then going back to Lou or Lug, what did you say is his name in Welsh?
Hey.
And is it a similar story of his birth and that, or?
No, it's a bit different. Yeah. So again, long story short, in Welsh, in the Welsh mythology, the Mabinogion, as it's known, the Mabinogion is the name that was given to it in the 17th century for the collection of all the stories together. Long story short, there's 2 wizards. One of them's a wizard king, and he's called Math, and there's his friend Gwydion. Gwydion's cousin wants to sleep with Math's virgin handmaiden because Math is immortal as long as he has his feet in the lap of a virgin when he's not at war. So this kid convinces Gwydion to take Math off to war. So they go down to South Wales, and they end up stealing a load of magical pigs off a king. They swap them for a load of other animals that they have constructed out of magic. They're actually made of mushrooms, I believe. And then the magic wears off, and then this king from I can't remember the name of the kingdom, but he chases them up Wales, and they stop off in 3 towns along the way. And those 3 towns are now known as Mochtra, or Pigtown.
Brilliant.
And then when they get to the top, they set a trap for him, and Gwydion kills this king with a magical enchanted axe. And anyway, Math gets back and found out that his handmaiden is no longer a virgin. So Gwydion puts forward his sister. And Matt says he puts his magic wand or staff or whatever it is on the ground, and tells her to walk over it and says, if you are a virgin, like, you are claiming to be, everything's going to be fine. If you are not a virgin, something's going to happen. So
what does she do?
she steps over this wand or staff, and it's quite gross, but the story goes that a ball of throbbing meat falls out of her. and she just runs off in terror and shame. And Gwydion gets this ball of meat and puts it in a magical chest. And the next day, he opens the chest and a boy is born inside it, and that's Kay.
Oh wow!
Yeah, right. And then he has a really hard time after that because his mum keeps putting curses on him to try and stop him from becoming a renowned person, I guess, to hide her shame. So she curses him not to ever be able to bear arms, and Gwydion manages to trick her into giving him a knife and fork to eat with. And then another time she curses him. What is it? There's 3 curses. I think she curses him not to have a name. That's it. And she accidentally, when he's in disguise, she refers to him as the boy with dexterous hands. So that's how he got his name there. And the 3rd curse is sadly the most tragic. She curses him never to be loved by a mortal woman. So they construct. Gwydion contacts her. He sends a message over email to Math and says, "Look, the mum's put a terrible curse. We need to do something about it." So they construct a woman out of honey and flowers in a cauldron, and she's immortal. So she's basically, nature incarnate, and she's known as Blodeuedd. So so they try to make a woman for him, but of course it doesn't work out. But that's another story.
Yeah, fantastic story, and
yeah.
Again, completely different. But like, that's like I've read that will say, sorry, I keep on referring him to as Lugh, but the cult of Lugh is like spread. There's a theory that London is Ludon. Have you ever heard that one? And then Leon is actually off Lugh as well. Yeah, but it's like
I've heard bits and pieces about this. Yeah. So in Welsh we call London Llundain, so Llyn as well is also quite close. I'm not quite sure on what it means, but there's a common sort of sound in it, isn't there?
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. But this is again going back to language, like to have that knowledge of Welsh or Irish is it's a great benefit for when you're reading into this, isn't it? Like I would love to have more of a knowledge of the older Irish, which is kind of, I don't know, like, again, I ask native speakers, but the older Irish is so different. They're kind of like, no, I wouldn't know. So like, it's kind of, I don't know, like, do you find you go to the same sources? So if anyone is listening to this for older Irish, I always like, there's, it's a story, what is it? Story archaeology. And it's, one is like, they have a great knowledge of older Irish, so they will do translations of some of the older stories. Well worth checking out. Like,
Nice.
That sounded like an ad, but I know people listening to this will be like, oh yeah, they'll be looking for sources like that, like I do.
Yeah, I do the same with the Welsh. If anyone's listened to me talking about this before, they'll know that they'll hear me mention it. But the Gododdin the Gododdin is a really good source for looking at Old Middle Welsh as well, and it's a battle praise poem from the Old North, or the Hen Ogledd, from when up by Caerhun, Edinburgh. Was a part of the Welsh. You can't say it was a Welsh kingdom, but it was culturally, more towards that. And they spoke the same language at the time, and that's a really good source for Old Welsh, Old Middle Welsh in that sense as well. It's also it's the first mention of Arthur as well. towards the end of the poem. Oh. And there's this one warrior at the end of it. He gets referred to as he's a bastion in battle, and he's supposed to be amazing, and he's holding his ground against the Northumbrians, who supposedly against it could also be them fighting against another sort of Celtic tribe. Anyway, this guy is referred to as being nearly as good as Arthur. Not quite, but nearly.
Excellent. And when did you get your interest in a lot of this, Sean? Did you start reading up to when you were a teenager, or?
Oh, I was the same. I grew up with it just as a kid, all around me. So I grew up on a mountain in Llandudno, my hometown, called the Great Orme. So it has the Orme comes from Yorm, meaning like worm or serpent in Norse. It's one of the few places in Wales that has a Scandinavian name, and in Welsh it's called the Gogarth, which could have sort of the idea of a bear in a cave. And looking over the hill, there's ruins of ancient castles all around, and stories of everything. So I literally grew up with it. So. Right. I just carried on embracing it. I think that, that's the thing, is most people, when they grow up in around here, they'll usually just end up getting swept away with modern culture, more of the idea of what's coming over from America and pop culture in England and stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
There is pop culture in Wales as well, but it's not as cool, sadly. So I like to go further back.
Yeah.
That's not for me dissing modern Welsh culture. I don't mean that. It's just,
of course, yeah. We all have.
It's just not so much of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, where I am as well, the county is Donegal. It's actually a Viking name. It means fort of the foreigners. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's a huge impact here in the. I suppose because it's the Gaeltacht, people mainly speak about just the whole Irish thing, but there's a huge Viking influence, even on our boat making, everything like this. Now, my interest would be in older kind of Irish. You've coracles as well in Wales, don't you? So yeah, coracles and corrux.
Yeah.
But we'll say.
I recently just looked into the origin of the word coracle, and apparently it is actually a Welsh word that got anglicised. So the original word for it is corugl.
Oh, and is there a meaning behind it, or is it just that is the word?
Well, Brock was having a go at me for this because I said, well, cwrw is beer in Welsh. So it's just got the GL on the end, like corugl. I don't know if it has any links to that, but of course, my first thought is to think of it, the idea of a drunken boat. Who knows? I will. Don't take my word as fact on that, but yeah.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, because this is it. Along with the interest of kind of Celtic culture and that, to me it went the boat building became a big thing. I went to our college and I dropped out of it. Really, it wasn't my cup of tea at all. Like if you veered away from anything, I was doing fine art, so it wasn't like illustration or anything. So you veered away from anything that wasn't. I used to go into a bit of illustration. They would say, "No, look, this is fine art. You shouldn't be going into that." And I just said, "Sod it." I left and I hitched around a lot of the UK, and of course trying to get in Stonehenge, down to Glastonbury, all these different places. And I was there for a good while, but it made me reassess kind of what I wanted to do. So I went back and I started building traditional Irish boats. Yeah.
Wow.
Called navogs, which would be from Kerry. So they'd be like wooden ribs, and originally they would have been animal skins, but we're using like tarred kind of heavy canvas, and then I find it's like when you're there and you work, like I'm sure, well, even more so in a tattoo studio, but you would meet like-minded people who will come in and they'll have an interest in the culture. Like I would imagine. Do you? I'd imagine. Like I know it's a weird thing because are you still open at the moment? Are you?
Yeah, we are now. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Like, would you have a lot of people traveling down who would have a huge interest in Norse and Celtic culture?
Absolutely, yeah, and it's wonderful. That's one of the best parts of the job, is to meet so many interesting people.
It's this is it. I can't imagine where I am. You get now. I work full time on this. It's like a community vegetable farm, but you have people who'd like working there and that have like studied Celtic studies, all these different things, mainly because of where we live. It's the Gaeltacht, so it's that constant Irish kind of thing. But you get some great information on, again, going back to language, stuff like that, you know. Do you find a lot of the stuff, the people coming into your studio would influence your work in conversations and that?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things, is when I'm tattooing, it's always a collaboration, and it's a collaboration veered more towards what they want. So I try as much as I can to take myself out of it, or my interest, and to just be a catalyst more for what they want, because they're the ones that are living with it on them forever. Well, not forever, but just until the end. And so I want to. Obviously, I do my best to apply the very best of my skills to their ideas. Because, like, say, because that's the main goal for me. I've witnessed lots of tattooers that are very much just completely ego driven by what they want to do there and then, and the person is just a flesh canvas for them. Whereas I really feed off, when I'm tattooing, I really feed off like that whole thing of like working with someone on their ideas, to make it personal to them, and because it's really it brings a lot of an element of chaos into the work, which is really nice because it keeps it fresh and exciting. And then when I do my projects outside of tattooing, that's when it is just me going, full idiot on my ideas and expressing myself and what my interests. Yeah.
And like, so do you find when people are contacting you for tattoos, do they kind of know what they want, or do they go, I want like a representation from this story or that story, or how does it normally work? Because you're very different than a lot of other tattoos, people like it's the flash on the wall or whatever it might be,
I would say that it goes into a few different categories. So it really is, it seems to be one in 100, I would say, that people come and they just say, you have complete free reign, do whatever you want. Wow. And then there's going to be a few more that'll say you have free reign as long as it's Celtic or as long as it's Nordic. And then there's, and then it goes into sort of subdivisions after that. But there's obviously the common theme is people usually want to have something that's personal to them, just done in, particular styles or so on. And like I say, I love that aspect of working with people to see, to bring their ideas to life, and it's really cheesy to say, but to get to the end of projects and to see the whole thing's finished, and to see their ideas as well as my own influence in it come to life is wonderful.
Yeah, of course. And how did you meet up with Brock and all that? Like, how did the studio start? Because I know a lot from just kind of reading about it, but it's kind of what's its origins? Like, did you start off as a kind of a normal studio? what way did it start? Or did you kind of go, right, we're going to do this kind of studio like this? It's
Well, long story short, I started tattooing 10 years ago, and in the beginning, I did sort of approach it. I actually approached tattooing, drawing freehand, and trying to veer more towards Celtic and Nordic designs. I was pretty much doing the same thing I'm doing now then, definitely to a lower standard. But, that's the way I was working. And then I completely got swept away for a few years doing the whole, the normal tattoo thing. I was doing dream catchers and full color realism portraits and so on. And then after a few years, because when I did that, I was focusing on learning how to tattoo, and I would tell people openly, I don't know if this is good or bad because it's not my thing. But if you're happy with it, then that's cool. And obviously I would apply the very best of myself to that, but I was mainly focusing on trying to do the very best machine work that I could. And then I learned to tattoo, and then I had I started to go more towards what I wanted to do. And then I realized it was a fantastic idea to stop advertising that I could even do anything else and only show the work that I like doing. And then that started to spiral in the direction that I'm in now. And I ended up, I got asked if I wanted to go work in a shop abroad, and I followed all of that path for a while, and I ended up working insane hours. My whole life was just work. And that's where I guess I started to really forge everything. And I came back to the UK, because for a long time I just went under the name Sean Parry Art. And then I decided I wanted to have something else that was, less egotistical. And because that was not really what I was thinking in the first place, but, that was just the first idea, what it should be. And then I wanted it to be something, more in keeping with the work.
Yeah.
So then Sacred Knot was born about 3 or 4 years ago, I guess. And then I actually asked Brock and Gloria if they wanted to come and work in the shop, because I really respected their work. I really respect them as individuals as well. And so that's basically it.
That's great. So just 3 years, is that all? Well, you've been really focusing on that. Like, that's incredible, really, when you think about it.
Well,
I know you've been like a major long background before that in, drawing and that, but wow.
Oh, the Celtic and the Nordic work I've been specialising for the past 6 or 7 years. Right. I've not doing anything else but that. But the shop has only existed for that time.
I get you. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
But still, though, as a shop, that's you've certainly achieved a lot. Like even now the Northern Fire as well, now LinkedIn as well. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And
well,
the podcast.
Yeah. Well, the idea of the podcast is to try and bring attention to the best parts of Northern Fire. Because I came up with the idea with Brock and Duncan, especially, and the idea is to basically try and bring the best to bring out the best in everyone and to share that with the world and to be able to support each other along the way. Because I think there's a lot of people out there that are really they are just capitalizing on artists. Artists aren't always the best people to be sharing themselves. I know that I really struggled for a long time as an artist and not as a businessman or anything else to really forge a career. So the idea is that with Northern Fire that we can, it's an artistic collective, and we can also, raise each other up along the way.
It's fantastic. Like for me, again, like I live in the middle of nowhere, and it's kind of the internet opens it up, but I'm useless at that kind of side of things. So it's lovely to be linked in with all these other artists from all over. It's a fantastic thing, really.
Yeah. But that is incredible, isn't it? How the internet has changed art.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like there's other artists, like there's great Celtic artists around the country, who're still not really on the internet. There's a guy here in Donegal, John Quigley, and he's been doing Celtic art for years. And he used to, the well-known Irish Celtic artist is Jim Fitzpatrick, and John used to colour Jim Fitzpatrick's paintings. So
no way.
At one point, Jim was just so busy, he had 2 people working for him. I think it was John Quigley and Jeff Adams Fitzpatrick, I think. and they would do the coloring and stuff, which is fascinating. But John, he's on Instagram. He's a handful of followers because he hardly ever posts. It's just like there'd be a post. I don't know, like it could be about 6 posts there. I'm not too sure. Maybe there's more than that, but it's kind of It's like you say. It's kind of having that collective where we're going to promote each other. It's important.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because that's the thing is, especially within Celtic art, there's so few people that actually practice it really, and are trying to bring out the elements that that deserve the attention. Obviously, knot work is, well, I love it enough to call my shop after it.
Yeah.
But but that's the thing as well, is that the spiral work is incredible and the key patterns are out of this world. And the zoomorph, the animal patterns within it.
The animal patterns.
Yeah. And so it's wonderful to see people that are actually practicing this. And that's one of the things I love about your work, is that you do put in the keys and stuff, because most people normally just focus on the knots, which is, you're only getting part of the story then.
Well, to be honest, when I was doing the book, Courtney said to me that he'd published my book. He has only ever published his own work. For me, that was huge, because again, like, it opened me up to more people. But it was meant to be a portfolio book, but I couldn't. It was like, there's all these stories, go with each one. And he's like, if he was saying to me, as advice, as like kind of one artist to another, he said, like, you're going to miss all the summer market. You know what I mean? That you should just get it out. And I was like, I can't release them as drawings on their own, because to me, they made no sense. They had to have the story behind them. So I spent months when I first started the book is like, it's 10 years ago. So I had chapters completely written and, just rough drafts, but it was just, there'd be some, yourself, there's some that you can release and there it is, it's a piece on its own and you don't have to know anything about it, but it's the story there's just gives it so much more, doesn't it? Like,
Absolutely.
Because that's the inspiration to it, I don't know. It's kind of, trying to think. There's one that's really interested me in the last while, and that is race. So it's like in mythology, in Irish mythology, the Fomorians. Now this is written by monks, so a lot of this is kind of linking it into biblical stuff. But they said, like, the Fomorians were a dark-skinned, and then the word, I think some were meant to be black. And then as I'm drawing it, I'm going, okay, I'm going to try and bring in, like, as I think there's such a rise of the right wing at the moment. And it's not like that everything you do has to be political, but I just thought it'd be interesting to explore it. But my fear is, when you're bringing in the Fomorians being black and then the Tuatha Dé Danann being white, you're nearly turning it into this race thing. But then the more you read about it, is they're all intermarried anyway. So they've been all it's something I want to explore more. Like, I know there's like, any time you talk about stuff like this, it's like, you're being political. And it's like, I'm not being political. It's just, this is the way it is. And we, like, a lot of our designs that we know are very kind of Aryan looking characters. And no, there's nothing wrong with that, in that, a lot of these characters were white skinned. But I think it is good to, I can only speak for kind of Irish myths and folklore. But a lot of these characters were also mixed, So it's something I want to explore, but it's kind of, I want to be careful with it. Do you know what I mean? Because it could be just, yourself and the internet, it could be just taken up wrong,
Yeah.
Like the Etna character, I did that years ago, and Etna was always described as like blonde and white. And I thought, well, she was very much, I'd never read of any, like we'd say the Fomorians would have been on Tory Island for 200 years. So they came here, they were almost like pirates. They landed in, and then they were there, and they never mixed onto the island for like 200 years. And then they started raiding. These are the stories. So I went, the Etna I drew, I went for just more darker features, and no one ever said anything. So I'm trying to explore a bit more of that, even though the majority are all described as kind of blonde, or, it's always like kind of, I don't know. But it's, again, I don't know where I don't know. I went a bit on a ramble there, Sean. I don't know where all that came from.
No, it's very interesting. I think exactly the same stuff with my work as well. It's it infuriates me the polarism within it all. Like, you either, if you lean slightly left, you get called a Marxist. If you're on the right, then because I when it comes to all of this stuff, I think it's more interesting to consider all angles and not to be, just on like one place or the other, especially more towards the right. That's not my thing. Because, we'll talk about Irish stuff now. There is in the writings about the darker skinned people, and there's certainly some evidence to back that sort of stuff up, like in the archaeology as well. You've got to wonder, like, say, in the Isle of Man, it's obviously not Ireland, but the people there, we'll call them the Celts in the middle, early medieval period, they believed that there was fairies that lived there before them. I'm not sure if they said that they were darker skinned or not, but they said they were fairies. And they were finding arrowheads in the ground that they were from people that lived in the Stone Age and so on. So who knows of what people could have been like before their new populations moved in and stuff. And especially, this is my point, what I was going to get to, when you look at the Bronze Age stuff in Ireland, a lot of the jewelry there does look more African. They literally have weighted, stretched ears and the big plates that they still have in Africa, and solid gold. And I mean, obviously, there's no reason why you'd say like, oh well, they were just white, that just were culturally more African in that sense or whatever. But there's no reason why you have to close yourself off to any ideas. It's the same sort of thing as like when anyone talks about women doing certain roles in archaeology as well. Like the idea of female warriors, you're like, oh no, it's just the stuff of poetry and whatever. But you should be open to it. Why not?
Yeah, like even in archaeology, a lot of stuff, it changes nearly every 10 years. People's opinions on different things, isn't it? Like, and you're right. Like like sometimes we think it's almost like this time of great equality, it wasn't like, but it's good to explore these things, isn't it? Like,
if anything, they were probably all united a lot more than just united in suffering.
Yeah.
It would have been a dark place in the past, all the way through history.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's good to explore these things, isn't it? Like I see, how many times have I mentioned his name? Courtney Davis, once again. Well, it's just I have chatted to him so much about knot work, and that's why I do mention him quite a bit. He has mixed in like mandalas and all these different things into his knot work, and he kind of was going through this phase of just mixing it all, and you're kind of going, fuck that. Like his stuff of like, you see, it's kind of hard to explain when you don't have the visual, but he'll have different stones, different kind of, like he'd be a very spiritual kind of person, different things, and he would mix it in with Celtic, and then he'll like mix in a bit of Norse, and it's like, fuck, it's incredible though. But in saying that though, my favorite stuff of Courtney's is all his more recent stuff, since he moved on to Tara Hill, which is that's like our Glastonbury, I suppose. That's the main point. And his stuff is just so fucking pagan now. Like, it's brilliant. There's like lots of antler figures and stuff like this, and you're going, geez, you know. But it is going back to the point. Anyway, it is good to mix up and explore, isn't it? Like,
Definitely. I mean, that's one of the things. Like when it comes to this idea of so, you know, as an artist, I've gone through some different progressions of how I feel towards, you know, Celtic and Nordic art. I went into it with first of all, from thinking like, okay, well, I didn't study the original stuff so much at first. I very much went along the lines of just feeling it, and coming out with what sort of felt, I'm stealing Brock's words here, what felt emotionally right towards representing Celtic or Nordic stuff, which I think is something that's very important to not lose. But then I went more towards just like, no, it has to come from just straight up archaeology and all of that. And then I ended up looking more into the history as well as the art. And then like finding, especially with the, you know, the insular manuscript style, as we'll call it, you know, if you look into that, like you can literally see the progressions of when new ideas were coming into it from the continent, from all of these different cultures.
Yeah.
Like they were completely about finding the best ways of doing things and experimenting. They certainly would have been artists, and there would have been very conservative, like you don't do this or that. But you know, just with the fact that you can see, you know, like the Sutton Hoo stuff, there's no Celtic influence into that as such. But then that did have an influence into Celtic art after it, and then all of the Viking styles, especially Ernest, that just fed completely into the you know, the Celtic stuff, and it fed back as well.
Yeah,
and that's one of the things I was going to get to before, is that there are like links with these things, and those artists were up for experimenting. So that's something that people should remember with now as well.
this is because we're linked. Like, I suppose there was like, I think we have this notion that people almost weren't well traveled or something, you know. But we were trading all over the place, you know. When
Yeah.
I didn't like, there's even links with the stories, isn't there, of with the Greek stories to some of the, well, certainly the Irish mythology. Like, I think people link their Apollo. I think, no, I'm terrible in Greek mythology here. So to Lou and things like this, and it's just like we were trading, we were constantly traveling, and like when you look at the Vikings and shipbuilding and travel, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
so we were being influenced from everywhere, you know. So it is a thing to explore. Yeah,
Exactly. There would have been thousands of lifetimes worth of people doing stuff, and like you say, traveling, exchanging ideas, telling stories. That whole idea of like a sailor that goes around and can't speak a language and tells a story. People don't remember it so well, so they'll try and tell it, and it ends up evolving, and that's how you get all of this crazy stuff.
Yeah, same as
the main
folk
thing,
music, isn't it? Like, you know, you get these, it'll be the same air or something, but it's different words, you know.
Yeah, and that is that's one of the things I think is so lovely about art in general, is that art is a language. I don't think that, well, everyone knows this, but I don't think people think about it consciously enough, about the fact that it is a language, and you are telling a story just by drawing anything or representing stuff. And it is a wonderful way to do it. And that's so, because I see in your work that you're on the same sort of mission as me, is it's about trying to capture your idea of that feeling of what was going on, but using, you know, the archaeology and the historical styles to give it weight.
Yeah. Well, you know what I find, Sean? It's like Celtic art in Ireland, on the main, is you're visiting Ireland as a tourist, and you walk into certain bigger shops, and you're going to get a Celtic design, and it's going to say Guinness on it, and
Yeah.
it's this completely bastardized thing, and it's always twee. It's always like so fucking twee. It's
Yeah.
like a lot of the stories are dark, and that doesn't mean like, oh, we have to focus on the dark. We focus on both, but it's almost like, oh, we're not going to mention that, or we're not going to mention this, and it's all this very bright characters and all. It's just very fake. It's the tweeness is for money. It's for money for tourists, and it just, like, I find it offensive when you see this crap being sold, um, and it's absolutely meaningless. Um, and I see it a lot even on. I'll get tagged on things because it's Celtic, and it's absolute. Like, I don't really go into it on the internet because there's no point in getting into this back and forth and back and forth. Um, but there's an awful lot of shite out there by kind of.
I agree.
I'm guessing you're asked as well. I get asked by like small little companies, nothing major, to do little twee designs, and you kind of, well, number one, the age old, they expect it done for pittance, but they're always just crap. They're just, there's no, like, the stuff, like, I like the fact I don't do, like, I used to be a full-time artist, and I would be more graphic design, and I could do my stuff, and I had to rely on that. Whereas the joy of not relying it for my full-time income is I can be more picky, and I can go no. And I'm not insulting, but I'll just say, oh, look, I'm busy, or look, I can't, I don't have the time. But it's just some of the stuff. It's just like the Viking stuff. I've been asked to do loads of Viking stuff. I'm not good at Viking stuff. I mess around with it, but I find, because I don't have a great knowledge of it, I find like I'm just doing this for the sake of selling something. So I find when I've more passion about the other stories, Celtic, Irish mythology, that's why I do it, isn't it? And like, you see it when you see an artist, when it's just it's doing it for the sake of selling something. And it's like, you can see that. Yeah, you can. Oh no, I'm going to sound like a lick ass, but you can see it in your work, Sean. You can see it in Brock. You can see it. Okay, I'm going to not name artists on Northern Fire, because then it's just like, but you know what I mean. You can see it in a lot of different people's work when they, it's coming from the heart, like, and then you can spot the. It's not like, hey, spot the fake, but it's just like, I don't see why they do. Well, I do know why they do it. It's just for money, and it's nice to create something when it's not about money. It's so important. Like, I know the world we live in, you need money to survive, but it can so destroy stuff. I think I don't know about Wales, but Ireland is destroyed with it.
Yeah. Well, I will say that our equivalent of that, I mentioned King Arthur before. The stories that I grew up with about Arthur are completely different from the Hollywood stuff. And again, the stories of Merlin that we have are not of a wizard with a pointy hat. So I just tried to ignore all of that side of that too. But what you were saying about the artist, the artistry, because I agree with you completely. And for anyone out there listening to this, the best thing you can do is to hyper focus on what you love. And if you're any good, eventually it will shine.
Yeah.
And just keep getting it out there, and keep working, and just keep producing and keep believing, because like you were just saying, Sean, the whole thing of just doing stuff for money, it does show. And a classic one is that, normally people, if you're an artist and someone comes in, they will ask to buy something that is the one thing you don't want to part with, the thing that you actually like and you're proud of. You're like, no, that was actually not for sale. But the rest is like, I'm not interested in the rest. I want that one now. Because that's what you pour your soul into.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do think it is growing. I'm trying to get back to the positive here rather than going on a big rant.
Well, like you were saying, though, just like with Celtic art, there's a light and a dark side, and they both should be acknowledged.
Okay, yeah, good point. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But hopefully it'll change. Like, I do think even like people visiting countries anymore are far more interested into, we'll say, like indigenous stuff from there, rather than
Yeah,
like, here's our fancy hotel, here's your swimming pool and your booze. It's like, I do think, and again, I suppose the internet as well has opened up a lot of that too. So things are good. It is improving.
it
See,
definitely
I'm
is.
not
Yeah.
that negative, Sean. That's all I'm trying to prove here.
No, I totally agree with you though. Like, my go-to when I talk about this, because yeah, I see that, and I've seen that in Ireland as well. I haven't been so much, but I've seen it enough. And we have it here as well in our gift shops and things, like nasty pastel colors, terrible knotwork with the overs and unders that don't work. It's fucking terrible. Drives me mad. But the go-to one for me is what happened to Celtic art in the late 90s and tattooing. It started off with some semi-good designs, just a few pieces that were copied out of the Book of Kells. So, some of them and other pieces that were just generally Celtic or whatever. And that sadly went hand in hand with tribal, with spiky tribal. And I think that's one of the. It's still just going to take a little bit of time for people to get over what happened there and that stigma of what they think Celtic art is. And because something that I'm very interested in is, when I ask people, I try and, it's difficult because obviously I'm talking to people that already are into it. But when I just talk to general people that aren't so much into what we are, and I say, what's your idea of a Celtic warrior? They have an idea, and it's usually something pretty cool. It's usually quite influenced by Braveheart. But there's it's blue body paint and swirls, sort of semi-naked, big and muscly with a sword. So they're kind of halfway there. That's what I was saying. Is emotionally, there's this idea there's something cool to it. It just has to be taken a little bit better. It's the job of artists to try and take it back in the direction of where it deserves to be.
True, yeah.
It's managed to happen with the Nordic stuff. Vikings are cool now.
Yeah.
Celts aren't quite as cool, but maybe they'll get there for better or worse.
We'll get there eventually. They'll have to do some sort of show.
Yeah. But that's the thing with them is, for whatever you want to say about the show Vikings, it certainly helped get a lot more people interested in it and to go down that path, which is wonderful.
Very true. Yeah. Like to me, I watched it. I couldn't get into Vikings. It took me a while, but I think visually, it's stunning. It's really good as a visual piece. And I know, like, you could criticize it so much, but as a visual piece, it's really, really good. There's parts I liked, and then I'd check them afterwards on the internet of like, okay, all right, yeah. Just so I'm, that okay, I've got the story all wrong, and I'm picturing this character from a TV show. But yeah, and that's it. But it's like anything. It starts at, like, the big one for me in the 80s. Were you ever a fan of 2000 AD?
I'm not sure if I've heard it. I might have. But
it's Slán.
Do you remind me?
Slán. Slain is what a lot of people would say.
Is it the cartoon of Ice and Fire?
It'd be a similar style, but it's 2000 AD was all the Judge Dredd stuff.
Okay, yeah.
And then they had
the comics. Yes.
Yeah, sorry,
I have seen them. Yeah.
And then it was Slánna, and like I remember, like I couldn't always afford it, but I remember I would be in the shop just staring at this character, going, "This guy's the cool," because we had that hint of the little tweeness to a lot of the stories where he was just like cutting off heads, and you know what I mean, and like he was dealing with all these real dark forces that are in Celtic mythology. And I think it, again, like, I don't know what kind of, that would be the, I suppose, 80s. And again, there's another, it's in the last maybe 5 years, there's a new artist doing it. And stuff like that, like Vikings, I'd say it was a huge influence. Like the stuff I would see in pubs to this day in Ireland, like, it could be a small village pub and you'd see the Celtic warrior in it and you'd be like, that's from Sláine. That's from 1996, whatever it did. Like I bought them all a couple of years ago. I just bought every Sláine I could.
Nice.
The artwork is incredible. And the stories are they're based on, but there's great research in it. You can, and that's it. It's like it inspires, doesn't it? Like, so, I don't know. There's, I shouldn't be. Yeah. We're not here really to talk about the show Vikings, really, are we?
You know what? It's one of those though. It's current, or slightly current, and it's what is inspiring people, so it's relevant.
Yeah.
And
true.
yeah, and for anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about, the storyline in Vikings it's inspired by the end of what's in the Volsung saga, but sadly the original is better. The book is better. But,
I got a story for you, Sean. Right, I was up. There's a stone circle here called Baltany Stone Circle, like after Baltine, and so it's like, I think they always have these little things, but it's meant to be the widest stone circle in Ireland, something like that. But I was going down there with a friend, and like there is so much history behind this place. And this guy and I'd imagine his partner coming down, they both had like plastic pints in their hands, and they're coming towards us. And he said, "Would you mind taking a picture? Yeah, would you mind taking a picture of me and my girlfriend?" I said, "Oh yeah, sure, no problem." So he leaned against one side of the stone, and she leaned on the other. And he said, "Are you familiar with the show Outlander?" And I said, "No." I had to check it on YouTube afterwards. And I found we were here at this ancient stone circle, and he's telling me all about this TV show called Outlander, and he's saying you should watch it. And I said, "Do you know anything about this stone circle at all?" And he said, "No." But I really wanted to visit a stone circle here in Ireland, because I'm a big show Outlander. I'm like, okay. So I suppose it is getting people interested in culture, these different shows,
But that's what's funny, isn't it? Is these are the new folk stories.
Yeah, very true.
It's obviously one of those. It's in a world of where it is like literally just Breaking Bad or all of that. It's interesting, but hopefully it's just a gateway drug.
Yeah. Can that be the quote of the whole interview? Hopefully it's
I think so. All right, I think we're going to have to cut it. We're going to have to leave it at this because my phone is actually about to die, so I want to do this with some dignity.
Well, listen, Sean, it's absolutely great to talk to you. Good.
You too, man. It was wonderful to get to put a face to the work after all this time.
Oh, no. Cheers. And again, listen, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the next piece you'll be posting.
Oh, thank you. You too. And as I've already said, as soon as we can, everyone in the shop, we're all going to come over and visit you because we all really want to meet you and hang out in person.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. The big thing, oh God, I'm still shouting out very quickly. I would have loved to have come over for that, what you were doing in that cave. Was that last year? Was that winter solstice, was it? Or?
Yeah.
That looked incredible. Absolutely incredible.
We will make sure to do another one then. And actually, I am going to try and put something together for a summer one as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, maybe we'll do it at Stone Circle. It depends on the weather.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm going to try my best to go to the next one. Like that looked just absolutely amazing. Really did.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to lie, it was fun. But hopefully we'll get to do them on a bigger scale in the future. Not to try and make them big, but
Yeah,
we'll see. Thanks, man.
Okay.
Well, it's been wonderful chatting to you. I'll see you soon.
Likewise. Okay. Slán.
Ta-da.